As a relative newbie in the psychedelic space, Breaking Convention 2023 provided me with some great insights into this ever-emerging realm. I started day one early with a cheeky flight into London Stansted, and already running late, I was sidetracked by my parents' new puppy. But after a 5-hour speed run, I made it to Exeter, an ancient city in the southwest of England. I parked up and made it just in time for registration, and just in time to see a man who has been prolific in the whole space for years, Jonathan Ott. I watched as Jonathan tore apart the term psychedelic renaissance, because these substances never went away. In fact, indigenous cultures and many other demographics don't consider their work with entheogens to be psychedelic. Ott was actually part of the research group to coin the term entheogen instead of psychedelic. Day 2 brought me no doggy distractions, so as soon as the day began, I was sat in the main hall listening to Christopher Timmermann talk about the neuroscience of DMT, past, present, and beyond. DMT and 5-MeO-DMT are psychedelics or entheogens, commonly associated with experiences of alternate realms or realities, communicating with entities, near-death experiences, and profound shifts in metaphysical beliefs. Timmermann presented findings from 8 years of research. What I found most interesting was their most recent research, where they've managed to extend the whole DMT experience and its peaks through continuous infusion. I was definitely keen to hear more about this, but I'd already set in my schedule. I had to rush over to see Rosalind McAlpine talk about the development of the PPS scale, a tool to assess how well prepared participants are for a psychedelic journey. A tool I find very useful and meaningful as a trip sitter. In short, the results showed that participants who prepared for their trip had more commonly good trips than their counterparts who didn't prepare. And what's more, this scale is freely available. Ever since I started practicing yin yoga, I've been fascinated by the nervous system, so I had to stick around for the next speaker. She spoke of the psychedelic experience from the nervous system regulation perspective. Let's say our nervous system has 3 settings: rest and digest, fight and flight, or freeze. During the psychedelic experience, there is an increase in cortisol levels and heart rate. This is why contraindications are so important, because the whole experience can be really challenging and stressful. This is why it is so important to build our stress tolerances. Those who are more sensitive to the sympathomimetic effects of psychedelics potentially have compromised autonomic nervous systems, either due to trauma, burnout, or just ineffective nervous system regulation coping strategies. What a mouthful. But such people are more prone to post-psychedelic agitation, such as hypomania, paranoia, increased anxiety, or nervous system overwhelm. Then I skipped back over to the main hall to hear more about DMT and how it can help us make sense of AI and the internet. Now, Alexander Beiner is one of the executive directors of Breaking Convention, but more to my interest, he was one of the participants of the extended state DMT trial. I remember him sharing an anecdote of how he was on the trial. They would put him on DMT every few weeks, but he would ask to extend the time between. He didn't want to go back so often. He said even the entities would say, "Oh, not you again," but luckily they would still help him out. He argues that the techniques, the practices, and the attitudes that help us navigate the DMT experience can help us navigate the ever-changing internet, a realm increasingly populated by AI entities, which nowadays are indistinguishable from human beings. In his own words, how DMT can help us in a world that is getting weirder day by day. Next up, Breaking Convention brought out a big gun, a world-renowned journalist and author of 12 books, and most recently popping up on Netflix with his own series Ancient Apocalypse. Graham Hancock took the stage and shared his own research on psychedelics and the quest for life after death, a lost key to prehistory. Graham is recognized as an unconventional thinker, since raising resonant questions on humanity's past and our present predicament. He mentioned how ancient traditions and the use of psychedelics are largely dismissed by his favourite group, archaeologists. And while the science is welcoming the therapeutic side of psychedelics, he's hoping that the ancient use of psychedelics and the role they played in shaping civilization, supernatural beliefs, and the origins of religion are continued to be explored. Then came my first workshop of the convention, which sparked my interest from a trip-sitter perspective. Jamie Pike, Catherine Zollman, and Duncan Still very enthusiastically held space for a collection of ideas to be directed towards a potential psychedelic practitioner forum. As practitioners themselves, they've noticed a lack of supervision, support, or collaboration to help them become the best practitioners possible. So together we grouped up and we shared ideas as practitioners and potential future practitioners about how we could develop a sort of peer-reviewed and peer support system. Currently in the UK, this whole thing is very underground. So a forum could really go a long way for sitters, practitioners, and facilitators. Something similar to the Guild of Guides in the Netherlands would really help build a UK community. The next morning started with a great breathwork workshop by Lilley. Another workshop I was lucky enough to squeeze into last minute. Liz had a lovely guiding voice, and the feedback from the group afterwards was very powerful to hear. These group sessions are always very private spaces, so I can't share with you what everyone else experienced. But for me, it was just a solid breathwork session, very similar to nice after effects of the Wim Hof method or any other holotropic breathing. Up next was another participant from the DMT extended trials at Imperial College London, Carl H. Smith. Carl was also the first person in the world to sustain the full 5 doses of DMTX in the pilot phase of the study. After over 300 public lectures, conference presentations, and keynotes in over 40 countries, plus he's already written over 100 academic papers, he was very eloquent in sharing his first-hand experience and interest in mapping consciousness and seeing which dimension we travel with the guidance of which plant medicine. What struck me most was his interest in technology and how we can use technology not only to replicate the psychedelic experience, but also to create new effects. Another big gun in the psychedelic space was up next, another Netflix superstar with a documentary called Fantastic Fungi, an author, an invention ambassador, and a receiver of many awards. Most recently, he received the Disruptor Award from NextMed, and now he has a psilocybin mushroom named after him. Paul Stamets took the stage, and he shared stories of his life experiences and his own research on psilocybin mushrooms and how they can save the world. I remember him being very grateful to see how many people were there supporting him and how many people were there and ready to push the psychedelic renaissance further. Now, it wasn't the big names that surprised me. It was actually the next few speakers I just happened to stumble across. As I was scrolling through the lineup, I stumbled across a name, Darren Le Baron, and he was talking about how psychedelic technology can heal the hood. He very poetically presented his case study, highlighting harder to reach communities that often face the same challenges but are marginalized in the psychedelic renaissance due to a lack of engagement, awareness, and access. He talked about the history and his findings on ancient African plant medicines. To be honest, he was the first speaker who wasn't scientifically mapping, charting, graphing, and all of this in some kind of Western science way. He was just telling it how it is, from his perspective, in his way, and this resonated with me much more. So when he recommended the next couple of speakers, I listened. And the next speaker who followed gave my favorite presentation of the weekend. The presentation was titled Psychedelic Medicines, Spirituality and Other Healing Modalities for the African Diaspora Family in a Divided World, and why it is important to heal oneself first. Obviously, I'm not African, so I might not be able to relate in a way that some others might. But what resonated with me was how she spoke of healing oneself first. She told such an incredible personal story about her son who was groomed into a drug dealing ring using really cult-like tactics. Obviously, she wasn't happy that this was the life for her son, but she took upon herself to heal herself through African spirituality and plant medicine. And slowly over time, she built a very trusting relationship back with her son. And through this, she was able to guide him back to safety. And up next was Modou, all the way from America, with a talk titled Wakanda, Not Woodstock. Modou works as a psychedelic coach for mental health professionals, and he also helped to decriminalize the possession of psychedelics in Detroit. He shared such interesting and comical takes on our society and the irony of it all. Like God loves you, and you're going to hell. And sex is a horrible, horrible, disgusting, sinful thing to do. So you should only do it with the people you love. Another shocker, and the reason the psychedelic renaissance must be careful, is because of exploitation and how all other plant medicines in the past have been exploited, such as tobacco, cacao, coffee, heroin, opium, and cocaine. And last but not least, Rick Doblin was in the main hall talking about all of his research in MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD. Back into the science of it all, Rick has successfully achieved 2 phase 3 studies and is on the path to potential FDA, EMA and HMRA approval. Basically, the results are very, very positive for using MDMA to treat PTSD. And this was the end of my experience with Breaking Convention 2023. And I'll leave you with a quote from Mr. Rick Doblin himself. "We are the source of all evil. Travel inside and work through it." And for anyone interested in this space, I highly recommend Breaking Convention, and I highly recommend everyone I spoke about. Please look into them for more detailed information. If you have any questions, please drop me a comment, hit the like button, hit the sub button, and I'm going to leave a load of links below. Thank you for listening.